And whenever you mentioned the word African, in their mind's eye, they could see the image of someone running around with a spear, with no language, who'd say ugga bugga boo or bwana or something, and who'd be in a jungle running from lions or chasing lions. But then when, after the war, when the United Nations was set up in New York City, black people began to look at men like Tom Mboya. They began to look at men like Nkrumah. They began to see men like Lumumba. They began to see men like Nasser. They began to see these Belawa and Azikwe, who could exchange intellectually with whites on an international level in a political form and hold their own. This made the black people in this country realize that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had been teaching all the time actually had substance. And they began to turn it over in their mind and see that what he was saying had more weight to it than what these other Negroes were saying. And they began to identify themselves with the black world.
Malcolm X addresses a turning point in history that changed African Americans' perceptions of themselves and their relationship to Africa in this powerful discussion. Africa was long associated with barbarism and primitivism, generating pictures of people chasing lions, running wild in the jungle, and speaking no language. However, following World War II, a change occurred. On the international scene, African leaders such as Tom Mboya, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba displayed their brilliance, talent, and charm. African Americans were significantly impacted by this increased visibility. They started to see themselves and their ancestors in a different light as they observed these leaders competing in global arenas. They began to wonder about who they were and where they fit in. Malcolm X provides a unique perspective on the complicated relationships at work with his observations on this specific moment in time. He discusses the significance of this change and its current implications for African Americans in this video.
I'm not familiar with the Freedom Now party. I'm not too familiar with politics, period, only that in the sense that white politicians have usually been very hypocritical where the so-called Negroes are concerned. So I'm a bit disenchanted with politicians and politics. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is a religious man, and his teaching is religious and his solutions are religious. The Freedom Now party, from what I understand, is headed by a man named, a lawyer named Conrad Lynn. I know him, it probably means well. Before passing an opinion on what it is he's trying to do, I would like to analyze it and see who's subsidizing him, see who his friends are, especially who his white friends are. And after a careful analysis, if I could conclude that there was no white support, I would be inclined to have confidence in it. But if I saw him leaning too heavily upon his white liberal friends for support, then I'd be suspicious of that too. The Muslims, in my opinion, represent an all-black party. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad pointed out at before 10,000 in Philadelphia on September the 29th at a rally that we were having, that in 1964 the black people should band together and do something about electing, selecting and electing representatives, black representatives politically, who have the rights and the best interests of the black people at heart, and that we should also unite together and sweep out of office all of the black political puppets who are used by the white power structure to continue white supremacy in our communities.
In that regard, would you include Congressman Dawson, for example, from Chicago, and some of the people who represent him on the Chicago City Council?
In what regard?
In the area of acting as a puppet.
I don't know what Mr. Muhammad's opinion is of Congressman Dawson. They both live right there in the city of Chicago together. I don't know what his opinion is of Congressman Dawson. I'm suspicious of any Negro, be he politician, be he clergyman, or a civic leader who is constantly patted on the back by whites. I have a tendency to lead toward the Negro politician who is constantly condemned by the white power structure. This is my thought pattern. I'm giving you an insight of it.
Now, I'm wondering if you didn't make a contradictory statement in Muslim terms by using white and friend in the same phrase. That is
I
to
use
say,
friend in quotes.
I see. In other words, if a black man cannot have a white man as a friend.
He may have a white man who's friendly, but being friendly and being a friend, I think, are two different things. I think there are many whites who act friendly toward Negroes. A fox acts friendly toward the lamb. And usually the fox is the one who ends up with the lamb chop on his plate. The wolf doesn't act friendly, and therefore the wolf has more difficulty in getting the lamb chop in his plate. I say that because it is usually if you study the structure of the Negro community, economically, politically, civically, psychologically, and otherwise, it's controlled by the white liberal, who usually poses as the friend of the Negro, who actually differs from the white conservative in the same way that the fox differs from the wolf. Their appetite is the same. Their motives are the same. It's only their mannerisms and methods that differ. The first time I met Herbert Hill personally was when they were picketing to stop the working on the Harlem Hospital in Harlem. Negroes for 10 years had to fight the city to get an annex built on the Harlem Hospital. Because in Harlem, we need a hospital more so than anything else. Our people are sick. Plus, we do a lot of cutting and shooting of each other, though we profess to be nonviolent. And Herbert Hill brought his forces out and stopped the working on that site. This is the first time I ever saw him. Then, when work was brought to a halt on a hospital in Harlem, the same Negroes tried to stop the work at the Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, which is predominantly white. They were out there for 3 months during the summer. Couldn't stop anything. And I never saw Herbert Hill out there one time. Now, whenever it takes a stoppage of something that's going to affect the white man, you find the white liberal absent. But when it involves something that primarily will affect the best interests of black people, and black people only, then that white liberal is present. Herbert Hill is the labor secretary for the NAACP. And if he was interested in black people, he would prepare a black man with the type of knowledge and understanding of the labor troubles involving black people that would enable a black man to sit in the same position as Secretary of Labor or Labor Secretary in the NAACP. I'm suspicious of whites who join Negroes and always have to be in the lead, who always have to be the head, who always have to be at the top in Negro organizations. Those whites who really have the interest of blacks at heart, let them give some advice to some Negroes and stand on the sideline. But don't join the organization and then get at the head of it and pose as a friend of Negroes.
Today, you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
Malcolm X was skeptical of politicians, especially white ones, because of their historical duplicity regarding African Americans. He questioned the legitimacy of the Freedom Now Party, led by Conrad Lynn, stating he needed to investigate deeper. Malcolm X viewed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a holy man, noting that Muhammad highlighted the significance of African Americans banding together to elect representatives who truly reflect their interests. He also emphasized the complexity of interracial relationships, stating that he was wary of whites who joined African American organizations and insisted on holding leadership roles. Malcolm X noted that some whites, like Herbert Hill, had worked alongside African Americans to fight for civil rights and workers' rights. However, he also pointed out that Hill's efforts were often focused on issues that affected whites, rather than just African Americans. Malcolm X further stated that he believes some African American leaders had betrayed their community, and that these leaders were often endorsed and supported by white liberals.
When you put a seed in the soil, it remains beneath the soil until the season changes. And when the season changes, the seasonal change automatically brings about rather atmospheric conditions, bring about a seasonal change that makes that seed come up or crop grow in its appointed time. And all over this world today, God himself has brought about political changes, a political atmosphere, sociological, social atmosphere, economic atmosphere. These economic conditions, these political conditions and social conditions combine to bring about a situation that is making black people in America more receptive, their mind more fertile to the seed of truth that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been planting for 30-some years. And this is springing up today and causing our people to see and understand now what they couldn't see and understand before.
What is the nature of this situation which is making black people more receptive?
Well, you take in the past, say, 15 years, how the nations have emerged, dark nations have emerged in Africa. Prior to 10 years ago, most Negroes associated or identified Africa with a savage, jungle-like place. And whenever you mentioned the word African, in their mind's eye, they could see the image of someone running around with a spear, with no language, who'd say Ugga Bugga Boo or Bwana or something, and who'd be in a jungle running from lions or chasing lions. But then when, after the war, when the United Nations was set up in New York City, black people began to look at men like Tom Mboya. They began to look at men like Nkrumah. They began to see men like Lumumba. They began to see men like Nasser. They began to see these Belawa and Azikwe, who could exchange intellectually with whites on an international level in a political forum and hold their own. This made the black people in this country realize that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had been teaching all the time actually had substance. And they began to turn it over in their mind and see that what he was saying had more weight to it than what these other Negroes were saying. And they began to identify themselves with the black world and the black struggle more closely than they identified themselves with this so-called white world.
What is the definition of freedom, justice, and equality for the black man, and where and when is it to be attained? Well,
take equality first. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad doesn't teach us to associate equality with whites. Equality has nothing to do with whites. We don't want to be equal with the white man. He's not the criteria or yardstick by which equality is measured. He's not in a position to tell us we are equal. It's not his right. It's not his to do. Equality, we want equality. We had equality before the white man was created. We had equality before the white man came into existence. And we want equality whether the white man is on this earth or not. Equality means the opportunity to develop all of our dormant potential, all of our dormant capability. And in developing this dormant capability, the right and the ability to stand on this earth on some land of our own and bring about a civilization and a society in which we will be completely independent, complete freedom to take care of the needs, to take care of the wants and the likes and the dislikes of our people, to establish our own nation, our own society, our own heaven, our own future. This is what we mean by freedom, by equality. And justice means as you sow, so shall you reap. If you do wrong, you'll get wrong in return. And if you do right, you'll get right in return. When you're in your own nation, in your own land, you're in a position to get justice. But when you're in another man's country, in another man's land, under another man's flag, and under another man's government, and under another man's court system, you have to look to that other man for justice, and you'll never get it. And Negroes in this country probably are authorities on that. Yeah. And all of the world powers got together, the white world powers, I should say, got together and helped all of these white Jews to establish a separate state in the heart of dark-skinned people's territory. And if white people can get together and let other whites, help other whites to establish an independent nation right in the midst of dark-skinned people, and then we don't see where white people should be so much against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's solution not of setting up an independent dark nation in white people's property, but he's asking the opportunity to set up an independent nation on our own continent. Let us leave America and go back home among our own people on our own land and set up our own independent society. But all he says is that this government, which made us slaves, should supply the transportation for us to get back home and give us all of the machinery and the tools necessary for us to till the soil and establish our own agricultural system to feed and clothe our people, our own economy, and in some way become an independent people among our own people on our own continent. This is intelligent, and Zionists should never criticize us.
Malcolm X discussed the complexity of racial politics in America, expressing doubts about politicians, particularly white ones, because of their historical duplicity toward African Americans. He questioned the legitimacy of Conrad Lynn's Freedom Now party, highlighting the importance of investigating the party's support and ties, particularly its relationships with white supporters. He regarded the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a religious leader who focused on unifying African Americans to elect leaders who truly reflected their interests. This, he argued, was critical to bringing about significant change. Muhammad's speech underlined the significance of African Americans taking charge of their fate rather than relying on outside forces. Malcolm X expressed concern about whites joining African American organizations only to take on leadership roles. This, he believed, exemplified the same patriarchal attitudes that had long afflicted African American communities. He maintained that true allies would offer assistance without attempting to dominate or control. Malcolm X also recognized the efforts of people like Herbert Hill, who worked with African Americans to fight for civil and labor rights. However, he pointed out that Hill's efforts frequently concentrated on issues that affected whites rather than African Americans. This, according to Malcolm X, pointed out the need for African Americans to identify and prioritize their own goals. Malcolm showed concerns about African American leaders who, he felt, had betrayed their community. He contended that these leaders frequently obtained endorsements and backing from white liberals, which simply helped to reinforce the current power dynamics. Malcolm X's statements emphasized the necessity for African Americans to question their leaders and demand meaningful representation. Malcolm X advocated the value of self-determination and independence among African Americans. He contended that freedom, justice, and equality could only be realized if African Americans had authority over their land, institutions, and destiny. This, he believed, was the key to achieving true empowerment and self-reliance. Malcolm X's vision for African American freedom was one of self-reliance and autonomy, rather than dependency on outside forces. Malcolm X also identified connections between the African American battle for independence and the Zionist movement. He remarked that Zionists acknowledged the necessity for a distinct state to achieve justice and independence, and advocated that African Americans should have the same opportunity. How do you think Malcolm X's message of self-empowerment and independence for African Americans remains relevant today? Please drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video, and hit your thumbs on the like button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.